Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today I am actually celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the first video I put on YouTube, and it's been a really long journey. Over the last year we've explored a lot of different coins, a lot of different types of analysis, and I've definitely grown a lot during that period of time. I've learned things that have worked, things that haven't, things that people tend to enjoy, and things that they don't. But in this video, I'm going to go through kind of the history of the channel, the way everything got started, and then we're going to look at a lot of the different charts that we've developed over the last year or so, and basically just talk about what's been developed, and then talk about kind of what the plans are for the future of the channel. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first thing I wanted to point you to is I had this goal of reaching 21,000 subscribers by the 1 year mark. Obviously, I did not start with this goal. My initial goal was to reach 1,000 members within a year, 1,000 subscribers, I should say. And then it took me about 5 or 6 months to get to 500 subscribers. And then it took me another 5 months to get to 20,000. Or maybe 6-7 months to get to 20,000. So if you do think about starting your own channel, don't get discouraged by what happens early on. It's hard to get traction. I would say just stick to it, because all you really need is a few videos to go viral, and then your channel can really start to move. So if you've always been on the fence about, okay, should I start my own business, or should I start my own YouTube channel, whatever it may be, remember that you just have to stay persistent at it and stay diligent, and continue to shine, and I think it'll work out. So let's go ahead and talk about the history of the channel. So I did my PhD from 2013 to 2018, and during that time I had plans to launch a YouTube channel, but I knew that if I did it while I was in graduate school that I would never finish my dissertation. So ultimately I decided to wait until I graduated, and then about a year after I graduated from graduate school, I decided to jump into YouTube. But at the time, I was actually pretty nervous about the whole idea, because there were so many people making videos on a lot of different coins. People everywhere were already discussing Bitcoin and Ethereum and a lot of the major coins, and it felt like the market was saturated in a sense. But I also had plans to make my channel unique in that we don't often pull up TradingView. I like to make my own charts, and look at things in a different way that you won't find anywhere else, really. And so I decided to make my channel about this, but I was still nervous to really go into the big coins, basically because I was worried about criticism. Hindsight, obviously, I think that was I was a little bit too worked up about it, but I was waiting for the right opportunity to jump in, and I feel like that opportunity presented itself. Back in early 2019, there was the launch of a coin or a token that it wasn't being analyzed by anyone. It was new. It was kind of a new idea. This was a way that I could test out my my videos and types of graphs that I could make on a smaller community to see how they would respond, and to tweak my methods in a sense before I really built up to larger coins. I'm curious if anyone can guess what token that was. I haven't spoken about that token on this channel in probably around maybe like 6 months or so. But it was the very first video of the channel. From this point on, from the video and this point on, this is going to be a longer video. So if you are interested in watching the whole thing, you might want to pause it, go get yourself a drink, get comfortable, because it's going to be a long video. But go ahead and guess if you know what token that was that I launched the channel on, to really explore looking at different types of analysis. So go ahead and pause the video, try to think what was that first token I looked at. Well, it was actually a token called Bomb Token. This token is fairly unique in that it was the first one that every transaction, 1% of the transaction or of the amount you're sending is burned forever. So basically the general consensus was it was designed as a social experiment. It had 1 million supply, 1% burned each transaction. The current supply today is around 921,000, so about 79,000 have been burned. And the initial distribution, it took a different approach. It wasn't an ICO or anything like that, which I found interesting, especially after the ICO mania of 2017, where so many people were getting scammed away from their money, and I just thought it was ridiculous. It was nice to see, another approach. So basically, 75% was just given away to the community. 15% was put into a community fund, which is still being distributed, I believe, and then 10% to the developers. So before what I'm going to do in the video is I'm going to go through a lot of the coins that I've looked at over the last year. So this was the first one that I launched the channel on. I was able to, improve my analysis by looking at this token and getting feedback. And I thought I would just briefly provide, an update to what's going on. I haven't actually looked at this token in quite a while in terms of, posting analysis to my YouTube channel. But you can see, it had one of those explosive bubbles early on, like we recognize, all over the cryptocurrency asset class. And then basically back a return to normal. And if you put it on the log scale, you can really see it. The initial accumulation or bubble down capitulation, and then now it's actually been going back up recently. I also like to sometimes show these 3-dimensional charts where you have price versus time with a color-coded dimension. This color-coded dimension is the BOM ratio with respect to Bitcoin. But let's go ahead and make that on a log scale. So now the color's on a log scale, the price is on a log scale, and then we have time. So it's kind of interesting because you can see this ratio basically going from close to 10 to the minus 5 up to 10 to the minus 3 in a relatively short period of time. Then it basically retraced all the way back down, and now it's actually somewhere around $1 to $2. One of the reasons though that I launched it on this token was because I thought the idea of burning tokens whenever you send it was an interesting idea, especially with the narrative within cryptocurrency of inflation in terms of fiat and trying to get away from inflation. So I thought this idea was interesting, and you can see over the course of the last year a significant amount of a significant percentage of the token has in fact been burned, approaching 8%. This move here was because the developer, I think, just burned like 25,000 tokens in one transaction or something. But it's been, it's had an interesting path. And here, I'm plotting the price versus time with the color-coded dimension of percent burn. And you can see that jump from, close to 5% up to over 7% burned. But this was quite the journey. This is what I launched my channel on. I started making reports on this token. And then once I really I built up a small YouTube community. I think I had like 50 subscribers, 100 subscribers, and then I started launching into other tokens and talking about other coins. One of the coins I talked about was something called XIO Network, and the reason why I naturally went to this one was because it was developed by the same people who started this one, Zachary and Austin. So this was similar in the thinking in terms of we're not going to do an ICO, but instead they gave a lot of the tokens away, and then they incentivized people to to participate in their kind of their ecosystem or whatever you want to call it in terms of getting rewards. And the reason we covered this token was because I thought it was interesting in a couple of regards. One thing that they have is, and this is again as a token I have not spoken about since I think the last time I spoke about this one was on December 31st actually. We said we were going to talk about this token in 2020, and then it kind of got put on hold because they were launching their DApp, and I think that's maybe going to launch soon. But the general premise behind this token that I covered back in 2019 was that it's like a startup incubator in the sense that if you're creating a token and you really have no connections in the space, and you need access to community, you need access to like experts, all this sort of stuff, you can apply to be in this XIO Network incubator. But another thing that they do that's actually quite interesting is that you can stake XIO tokens in the incubator, So basically, you're staking it, and then you can receive whatever those incubated project is. You can receive those tokens as interest. So it's kind of a way that if you're really interested in, say, like micro caps or younger projects, I would say, like if you want access to younger projects and startups, but you don't have the time to go do your own due diligence, then one possible solution is to look into this, because they're essentially doing a lot of that legwork for you in terms of, say, like screening various projects. And one of the nice things about it is that by continuing to just stake the XIO network tokens, you can get those other startup tokens in return. So you're then kind of building up your own little like mini portfolio of micro caps, if you will. So it's kind of interesting, and you of course get these tokens back. These tokens come back home to you after you stake them, and they bring home interest in the forms of other tokens. Another thing you can do is you can just stake XIO and receive interest. But here's the thing, on a lot of different ERC20s, but the nice thing with it is that you receive the interest up front. So let's say you wanted to stake a certain amount of XIO tokens. The idea is you stake them, and then you can actually receive the interest. You might say, okay, I want to receive Link or something, and then you actually get those tokens right away. Your XIO tokens stay locked up. You can withdraw them early, but if you do, there's a penalty, and I think some of your XIO tokens are burned because you've already received the interest up front. So if you want to, this was one of those ones I talked about early on, or I should say I talked about it in 2019. I thought the idea was interesting. It was one of those smaller tokens. It has grown a lot since I last covered it. And the reason we talk about these different coins from time to time is because we do believe in on this channel. I talk about lengthening cycle theory quite often. And if this cycle is going to be lengthening, and maybe the next peak is somewhere out in, say, 2023, then we're going to be here for a while. You might as well buckle up. You might as well get comfortable with the ecosystem of cryptocurrency, explore what there is out there, find projects you can get behind, and then just get along for the ride. I mean, we have plenty of time. Certainly Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're not going anywhere anytime soon in the terms of Bitcoin's not going to like 100K or anything tomorrow. So you have time. I would just say explore various projects. But some of the things that, we're just going to quickly look at the price of this token. The last time I covered it was on December 31st, 2019. So it was actually the video where I talked about my plan for 2020. Since then, you can see it's had quite a remarkable price history. And it's funny because it's like every project you analyze in crypto, you end up having to put it on a log scale just because of how volatile it is. So let's go ahead and first add in our color-coded dimension with Bitcoin, put that on a log scale with price, and then put the log scale with the color-coded on XIO Bitcoin. So this is where I covered it. You can see that in the short term, it did go down, came all the way back up to a few pennies or so, all the way back down to less than 10 to the minus 2. So this is less than a penny for a month. And then what's crazy is that it went from like less than a penny to 38 cents in a few weeks. It was insane when I saw this happen. And I know there's some people that follow that I talk to on, say, a Telegram. If you want, you can check out this Telegram channel here. We have around 3,600 people in the group, so please go ahead and go check it out. But I had people messaging me about this. I was completely taken off guard by this. And even still, it actually is still hovering, or I think around like 6, 7, 8 cents or something. But it was quite a remarkable move by this token, and it was only about a month ago or so. So I thought that was interesting. You can see there is at least some, there's a decent amount of interest in the project. I mean, obviously there was a lot of projects really pumping last month, especially a lot of smaller coins. So obviously, if you're ever gonna enter like the micro cap space, you certainly need to be careful. But I mean, this was an insane. I mean, it was like a 40x return in like a month or two. So I just thought that was interesting. I should also reiterate that the purpose of this channel is just to present like market analysis. This is not financial advice. I'm not saying you should go buy any specific token, but this is just to provide my insights into the market and relay them to you. So the next token that we covered, I moved up from some of the smaller coins. I moved up to a larger coin, like around number 50 or so. We looked at Nano. And I thought this one is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a peer-to-peer currency. It's feeless and instant. I think it really shines when Bitcoin fees are going up, because then the narrative pushes that, Nano is feeless, it's instant. You don't have to wait 6 hours. You don't have to pay $30 to transfer $5. So it's kind of a neat story to tell. And now we're just going to talk about a lot of the different charts that we've made. So I'm going to try to speed it up here, start going through a lot of these charts. So this one was just the ROI normalized by days since inception. And you can see this compares Nano to Bitcoin. So that was kind of interesting, because actually early on, the ROI of Nano actually significantly outperformed Bitcoin if you normalize it with regards to time. In fact, Nano saw about 1,000x return in a very short period of time, just in a few months. Whereas with Bitcoin, it wasn't nearly as high. Now, I should reiterate that we don't have Bitcoin history all the way back to 2009, so it could be that it would really go below this point. But for what it's worth, this is what we have, and you can see, how Nano went up higher and then it came crashing back down lower. And we do expect, right? And remember, LinkedIn cycles, things are going to take a lot longer. But since the bottom that Nano saw back in March, it's up like 3 or 4x in the last 2 months, and it's still looking pretty strong. So this was another one of those coins that I really did cover a lot early on, and I still cover it from time to time on the channel. Here's one where we're just also adding in a we're making this a logarithmic scale as well, so times log scale, so you can look at that. Now, going into the rest of the charts, I just want to reiterate the fact that we do talk about the 20-week moving average a lot, and if you're not familiar with why, it's because during a bull market, the 20-week moving average tends to hold as support, and during a bear market, it tends to be resistance. So this is why we look at the 20-week moving average, and you'll see it in a lot of charts in the future. So this one here shows Nano, and it shows the price when Bitcoin is above the 20-week and when Bitcoin is below the 20-week. And actually, it's Nano with respect to Bitcoin, not fiat. So it's interesting because many of the times Nano shoots up in the short term when Bitcoin goes above its 20-week moving average. The only time it didn't was here in 2019, where it actually still did it in the short term. So every short term move, when Bitcoin got above the 20-week, except for maybe a few of these shorter term, ones that only lasted a few days, it ultimately did move up in the short term, and then this was the time where it actually retraced a lot. But every other time it has gone up. This one shows the logarithmic regression of Nano prices. So this was, a lot of these are just fun charts to play with. These are ultimately imaginary lines, but it's just to try to get you to try to understand where we might be in the market cycle. And I even said you maybe use this to help identify this as our local bottom. And so far since then, we've been moving from that green line, our lower regression bottom, up to our next regression line, which has seemed to be like an area of support. And not that this line is an area of support, but it just happened to correspond to something in the price metrics that was. So now this Litecoin is one of those coins that I do get asked about a lot, and the reason why I don't publish many videos on it is because I ultimately expect it to move sideways for a while. The reason is because if you look at the history, leading up to 2016, in the 2015 halving, you can see it pumped, it dumped into the halving, and then it moved sideways for a long time. You can see here, it pumped, it dumped into the halving, and then I said back over here, I was like, I think it's going to move sideways for a while. It clearly went up in the short term and then back down, but I think ultimately, and you can even see here, there was some shorter term spikes. I think for the most part, Litecoin is likely going to move sideways, and I think it's probably going to move sideways until Bitcoin gets to its previous all-time high of $20,000. Now, that doesn't mean that Litecoin can't go up 2x or something, or 3x, but I don't think you're going to see any remarkable moves until Bitcoin gets to its previous all-time high. And remember, I do think there's better projects out there than Litecoin, but at the same time, one of the narratives I've seen play out time and time again is, people want Bitcoin, they come, they try to buy it during the peak of a market cycle, and they realize, oh, it's so expensive, I'll just buy Litecoin because I can buy a lot of those. So despite, I know there's a lot of stuff out there where, I mean, and if you look at the market cap since 2013, Litecoin has been moving down the ranks. So it started off at like 2 or 3, and then it moves down like 1 to 2 spots like every couple years. So now it's getting in closer to the bottom of the top 10. So I might actually expect this coin to drop out of the top 10 during this market cycle, but it does not mean that it won't pump again if Bitcoin gets to say its previous all-time high. I think this could be a catalyst to really move Litecoin again. Here is the logarithmic regression of Litecoin prices. So again, this is just one of those fun charts to look at to try to identify like our support in this region was also support here in 2019 and again here in 2020. And when I say we're probably going to move sideways, I would expect us to be between, say, like this lighter blue band to this darker blue band for the next 18 months. I don't really anticipate Bitcoin getting to its previous all-time high and sustaining it until another 18 months from now. So because of that, I don't really see Litecoin moving out of this window for the next 18 months or so. We also looked at XRP. I don't really talk about this one, but this was one of the ones that I talked about. I even made a report on it called Ripples in Time. There was also a report I made on Nano called the Nano newsletter. This is one of the reasons why I don't talk about XRP. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of FUD surrounding XRP. However, that has not kept it from yielding a significant ROI at key times during the market cycle. So maybe you just don't buy XRP for fundamental reasons, and that's perfectly fine. For me, I just look at the data and look at what the data suggests might happen, and I use that to inform my investments. And what I have noticed is that when the XRP Bitcoin ratio gets into this level down here during the bear market phase, so after a peak or after say Bitcoin is doing something remarkable, you want to look for, say, a ratio of 10 to the minus 5 to be a really good buy region. And then a 10 to the minus 4 ratio of XRP with respect to Bitcoin for a historically good sell region. Again, this is not financial advice. Now, what would need to happen? I've talked about this before. I said, and it wasn't a popular view, but I said I think XRP, the last time I made a video was probably like over here. And I think I said, I think XRP needs to get back closer to this region before I would personally feel comfortable putting more money into it. And the reason is because I just think that when it gets to this level, this potential final capitulation with respect to Bitcoin, then the risk reward on it could be really, really high. Now, there's a lot of people that just continue to buy XRP even in the bear market, and that's okay if you want to do that. But the thesis that I put out is, why buy XRP during a bear market when it usually just bleeds value with respect to Bitcoin? This is the thesis, and you can see that it has been continuing to bleed. It doesn't mean it will bleed forever. In fact, if you look at the spikes that XRP goes through, they only occur in like a few days or a few weeks each market cycle. So, plenty of time for FUD to surround XRP. But despite all of that, it's still sitting at near the top on CoinMarketCap. It's still sitting number 3 right now on CoinMarketCap. So with this in mind, I get it. I get it if you really don't like this coin. But at the same time, for me, I would probably look more into it if it were to approach this level. If it pumps before that, fair. I don't care. It was outside of my risk reward tolerance, and I'm happy for everyone who picked it up beforehand. But what would need to happen for it to get to this region? Well, the same thing with Litecoin. If Bitcoin were to go to its previous all-time high of $20,000 and XRP were to just stay where it currently is at around 20 cents, then the ratio, guess where it goes? 10 to the minus 5. So this could be the final capitulation before a potential spike. And this might happen sometime in the next, say, like 18 months or so. So this is what my thoughts are on this coin. I'm talking about it because I have spoken about it before. Here's actually a figure I've never shown. I don't think I've shown this figure on XRP on my channel, but I found it in my files, so I just thought I'd put it up here. It's like a logarithmic regression of XRP. It was kind of hard to do because it was launched in late 2013, right during that bull market. So it's kind of hard to really know how to draw these lines, how to fit the data. But ultimately, this is what I ended up doing. So looking at, this in 2017 was our was our low, and then it really spiked up in a very short period of time. And since then, it has been bleeding back down. So I haven't pulled the trigger on XRP this market cycle yet, but in the next 2 years, it might become a possibility. We've also talked a lot about Link. Here's logarithmic regression of Link prices. We've also shown it with respect to Bitcoin being either above the 20-week moving average or below the 20-week moving average. I think this is useful. This yellow line is our fair value fit, this kind of being our sell region, and this kind of being our buy region. And so I think it's certainly been interesting over the last few days, few weeks. I do think when I made this chart recently, I think I accidentally put in a higher. I think I copied a price wrong because it did not go up to this level recently. I think it went up to around $4. So this spike you see there, I should just show this chart instead. So this is what it looks like up to the current day, and you can see that it's actually still slightly above the fair valuation line. But what I would anticipate if Link outperformed the entire cryptocurrency market cap. The entire asset class basically by several times during the bear market. If we really enter a bull market, it'll be interesting to see what Link does. And if we enter, say, the sell region that this is drawn by, then it could reach $100 by 2023, which is ultimately where I see Bitcoin potentially seeing its next all-time high of, say, around 100K before retracing. Here's the days since inception, so price versus days since inception. Link compared to Bitcoin, you can see it's actually fairly similar history. It kind of peaked earlier on, then came back down, and then it came back up, close to where Bitcoin was, in fact, and then it's almost keeping pace. Not quite, but a lot better than a lot of other coins, that's for sure. Here is the 30-day, 90-day, and 365-day ROI of Link, and this is a logarithmic scale. So it's interesting because if you look at, say, the 30-day, there's several times where you're seeing a 2x in 30 days, 2x or more in 30 days. So this is, Link has been really great to hold during the bear market. I think it's probably been my best asset in terms of just longevity and it continuing to go up in value and not just crashing like a lot of coins do. You can even see the 365-day ROI has been almost 20x in July 2019. So if you had bought in July 2018, you would have been up almost 20x by July 2019. So that's pretty incredible. And that has been going down some just because if you had bought a year ago today, you would only be up 2x, a modest 2x. So I think these charts are useful. I'm just trying to give you guys a taste of the different charts. Please subscribe to the channel if you guys like the content and you want to see these charts more on a daily basis. I don't usually make videos this long, but I'm just doing this to kind of commemorate 1 year of the channel and to show you guys what the channel's all about. Nothing you're seeing on this video is TradingView at all. It's all my custom graphs. We also looked at Cardano. So we've looked at, say, the risk metric of Cardano, trying to identify buy points and sell points based on past volatility. So this is my primary hedge against Ethereum. And I think many of you guys know that. But we've been talking about Cardano since it was at 2 cents, and it's currently at around 8 cents. This is definitely one I am holding for the duration of the next market cycle. We also put out a video recently that said, okay, well, a fun thought exercise. What if ADA had the market cap of, and then we did several different coins. You could see, if it had the market cap of Litecoin, it would be a little over 10 cents. If it had the market cap of XRP, it would be at 30 cents. Of Ethereum, it would be at $1, and Bitcoin would be $6. Now, you might think, well, it's never going to reach the market cap of Bitcoin. Well, it might not reach the market cap of Bitcoin today, but in a couple years, or say 3 years, the market cap of Bitcoin could be $2 trillion. And, it's not that unheard of to think that ADA could go to 170 billion market cap. I know there's a lot of skepticism when I say that, but you also have to remember during the last market cycle, the market cap of Ethereum was smaller. It was very small. And today, the market cap of Ethereum is higher than what Bitcoin's market cap was in 2015. So you can see these incredible returns over many, many years. It's just that people often get discouraged during bear markets and they forget what bull markets are like. This was one of those fun charts just to look at, say, a logarithmic regression analysis of ADA, and using this orange line to try to identify our baseline of support in terms of, okay, we're at this level, it's probably a good time, historically speaking, to DCA ADA, because usually when we're at this level, it doesn't take long before we start heading back up. And you can see that it happened again, so 3 times so far. Now let's go ahead and move into Ethereum. This first one I'm just going to show because I was going to show it to show the Ethereum graph, but I guess this is the Bitcoin chart actually on terms of expansion and contraction phases. I'll show this a bit later. Here we're talking about price versus the hash rate. So we also do like an on-chain analysis on the channel. I get that the hash rate could be drastically altered when Ethereum moves to proof of stake. But until that happens, this is what we have to work with. And if it doesn't change during this market cycle, which some of you might think, okay, well, it has to change. Well, it doesn't have to. Again, in 2015, had you told me it wouldn't have changed now, I would have been shocked. So just keep an open mind. It might change to, we might transition to proof of stake this market cycle. Nothing's a guarantee. I think it'll happen this market cycle, but I'm just going to use this chart to try to identify what could happen if it doesn't. So this is the price versus the hash rate. You can see we kind of came up and then ultimately curled back down. So the hash rate went up as the price went down, and we kind of accumulated in this region. I anticipate us moving up again at some point, going up to a new kind of paradigm shift, and then recoiling again and accumulating. So going up to potentially a 5-figure Ethereum before returning back to a 2,000 or 3,000 Ethereum, where we've ultimately continued our trend upwards. This is looking at the Ethereum Bitcoin ROI. So these are sub-cycles of Bitcoin. So the light blue is when Bitcoin got above the 20-week moving average during during the last Bitcoin market cycle. This was the ROI. Cycle 2 is when Bitcoin got to its previous all-time high. This was the ROI. Cycle 3 is now, we don't really know exactly when Bitcoin is going to get to some milestone. So until that happens, I was just plotting it from back when Bitcoin got above the 20-week moving average a while ago. We know we dropped below that, but until something drastic happens, I'm not actually gonna try to figure out what subcycle, what exactly this is going to correspond to. I think it'll correspond to Bitcoin holding the 20-week moving average, but until that happens, we're just kind of playing in the sandbox in a sense. Here is the price of Ethereum when Bitcoin is above the 20-week and below the 20-week. So again, you can see when it's above, Ethereum tends to go up. When it's below, Ethereum tends to go down. This is why I say it's good in general to consolidate out of a lot of altcoins when Bitcoin drops below the 20-week, and potentially diversify when Bitcoin goes above the 20-week. Here is the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio when it's above and below it, and you can see a similar story. Again, similar to Cardano, the only time that it didn't work out in the short term is in 2019, where the ratio actually bled when Bitcoin was above the 20-week. This chart, many of you probably remember a lot of these charts. I'm just going through them to get everyone caught up on, say, like 40% of the charts that I make. This one shows the 1-year ROI averaged out by month, so you can kind of see it kind of goes to these longer term trends, like up and then down and then slowly back up, probably over the next several years. But these are some of those things that can help identify macro level trends. We've also looked at the risk metric of Ethereum to try to identify, better times to sell and buy Ethereum, looking at historical support levels and potential times to sell. We've also looked at it with respect to Bitcoin to try to identify support regions and sell regions. So if you guys like this content and you want to see more of it, you can always check out my premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. This one was an interesting chart that I talked about. It was basically like times crossed various price points, number of times crossed that Ethereum crossed these price points. So I thought this was an interesting chart just to try to get an idea of, on a daily time frame, how many times has Ethereum crossed various milestones. You can see there was a peak at around $10, another peak at around $200. Maybe there'll be another peak at $3,000 in, say, 5 years or something. But it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out during the next market cycle. This was one I published a while back showing the average 1-year ROI broken down by month. So you can see that the average 1-year ROI, and this is not statistically significant in this sense because it's looking at tons of data that some months it would have been huge ROI, some months it would have been really bad. But it's interesting because it does go along with the thesis of buying Ethereum in December, January tends to be really, really good. And we even made videos back in October and November preparing people for December and January this past year. And it did work out again. We saw Ethereum go up to 2.5x, during the first quarter. I mean, it did retrace some, but it's also recovered back. This shows the average 90-day ROI. You can see the same general trend, better to buy in December, January, February, March, and then during the middle of the year it becomes less obvious of a good buy in the short term, where the average 90-day ROI in June, July, August is actually less than 1, meaning you're losing some money. So that's interesting. Now, finally, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. I know this video is getting a little bit long, but I just want to really onboard people to the channel who are completely new. This is, after a long time of talking about a lot of other coins, I really did decide to jump the gun and just start talking about Bitcoin and see what happened. And this is what did propel my channel kind of from 500 subscribers up to 21,000. It was talking about Bitcoin, using the analysis that I did for other coins, and then applying it to the coin that leads the market. It's the index of the market. So this one shows the price versus the average transaction fee. I do like to do on-chain analysis for you guys sometimes, and it's an interesting trend to see these lines pop up. As you can see, it kind of flattens out each market cycle. It'll be interesting to see where the fees get during the next market cycle, especially if the price pushes up to $100,000. This one shows the price divided by the hash rate, which is interesting because you can see after each halving, you can see it goes up. The reason it goes up is because the price is going up a lot quicker than the hash rate. So you have a larger number divided by basically the same number. So this has to go up. So you can see we saw a peak here. This peak was more delayed. I feel like this other peak will be even more delayed and won't peak until, again, 2023. This one shows the price versus the hash rate. Again, similar types of similar stuff. We're still moving up. Don't get bogged down by the short term. This was one of the favorite charts, looking at market cycle ROI from market cycle bottom and noticing that the cycles are lengthening. We're looking at market cycle bottom, okay? Not the peaks, market cycle bottom. And noticing that the cycles are lengthening, in fact, and that our next cycle we would anticipate coming way out here before it peaks. And this would be maybe a 30 to 40x ROI from the bottom, which was around 3,100, putting us at around a $120,000-$140,000 Bitcoin, sometime between 2022, late 2022, so quarter 4 of 2022 to the second quarter of 2024. If on the chance that we haven't bottomed this cycle, then this is what the third cycle would look like, and that means we haven't even started the fourth cycle yet. I think we've already bottomed. I think 3,100 was our bottom, but just for those bears who think we're going to go to 1K or something, this is what the third market cycle would look like if we in fact have not bottomed. Here is the chart I meant to show earlier for Ethereum, but it's basically our expansion, contraction. So you can see the contraction phases are getting longer. So 1, 2 points, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is annualized, and then we're preparing for our next expansion phase over the next several years. This one was a video that a lot of people didn't get a lot of traction, but I thought it was interesting. It shows the frequency of daily 5% moves to the upside. So every line is a day where the price of Bitcoin went up 5%. Here it shows negative 5%. So if it freaks you out to see those moves where it moves 5% to the downside, believe me, it's going to happen a lot this market cycle. You can see it happens constantly throughout many of the market cycles. So if this happens, it's just par for the course, okay? And then here's an example of, say, plus or minus 15% moves. You can see they were a lot common earlier on, and then they get less common as we move forward through time, which is showing that the volatility of Bitcoin is decreasing. We also showed the price of Bitcoin and noticed that we had this valley here, this like peak here, and we said, okay, well, what if we average this here to this point here, and we just continue that? and it turns out to look like a nice smooth curve here. So this, I think, helps establish our longer accumulation phase. So get rid of the noise, look at our longer accumulation phase, and just see it for what it is. It's, it's a multi-year accumulation phase. It's going to take us another 12 to 18 months probably before we really start moving. This is our risk metric for Bitcoin, so this is definitely one of the favorites to look at our, and this is based on diminishing returns, lengthening cycles, so it takes all that into account to identify the valleys of the risk and the peaks. So it helps, and I think it helps in terms of DCAing into the market and DCAing out. And if you want access to this, remember to check out my website. You can find that in the description below. Also, subscribe to the channel and check out the Telegram channel if you guys like the content. This chart shows the price of Bitcoin versus the risk. So it's interesting because you can see these bands that form. In the last cycle, you can see we had a loop that formed, and then we're now in the process of making our loop in this cycle. Maybe we'll make a second loop. But I do think it's interesting in general to see the loops that form and to see that cycle repeat from one market cycle to the next. You can even kind of see the loop in the first market cycle right here. This shows the 1-year ROI of Bitcoin, again, broken down by month. So you can see it comes down, it goes back up, and then it comes down again, and it takes longer this time. And then this one, I think it's going to take longer and then take us out somewhere over here in terms of the 1-year ROI. Let's go ahead and speed this up because I know the video is getting long. This is the 90-day ROI. I'll let you guys look at that. It's just just so you can see in the long term, what is your 3-month ROI if you're averaging out over every single month of every single year. This one is an interesting chart. I don't think I've actually shown it on the channel. It shows the price of Bitcoin on the left axis, on the primary axis, and it shows the time derivative divided by the price of the 20-week moving average on this axis, on the secondary axis. And you can see, especially at the peaks, in the bottoms, you can see that the time derivative is spiking. So it can maybe help identify these valleys here. Okay, a lot easier. So you can see when we hit these points, you can see that the time derivative of the 20-week moving average divided by the price is spiking to around 0.2 or higher. So this could be useful in terms of identifying an immediate shift in the short term. This shows our daily percentage change, so you can kind of see it's generally decreasing, but a lot of us were here for, and this, by the way, is the logarithmics, or the absolute value, and it's on a log scale, which is why you can see here we had like a 40% change in one day, but it was to the downside. This was in March. But in general, the volatility is decreasing. Don't mind, like 1 or 2 data points here or there. This shows our running ROI, our running 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, and 4-year ROI. So I think this is another way to identify bottoms, because you can see that the running 1-year ROI tends to bottom out here at around 0.2. So if you use this chart, you could say, okay, well, the 1-year ROI is around 0.2. It means likely the price, in terms of identifying where a bottom might be, it's likely going to be around that point. And you can see this one was the end of 2018, which is exactly where the bottom occurred. This chart shows the Bitcoin price, and this one shows the ROI time in days. So it's a band of 2x. So it shows the amount of time, the amount of days you would have to wait to see a 2x on your investment had you bought Bitcoin on that day. So you can see they're steeper earlier on, and then they're lower on the scale because it didn't take as long. And as we move throughout each market cycle, they're getting longer and flatter. So this next one, these bands up here are probably going to print like this, like really long and wide bands, because it's going to take us a while to at least to see the one here where, because to see a point here, we need to get to a $40,000 Bitcoin. So this band is ultimately the one that we're going to want to see form sometime in the next several years. And then these are probably some of the favorite charts, the logarithmic regression fit to non-bubble data of Bitcoin, showing our fair value, out in say 2023, 2024 will be around $30 to $40,000, and I anticipate a 300 to 400x or 300 to 400% overvaluation during that time. And remember, this will need to be refit during each market cycle. So far, it's fit to data through the beginning of 2019. It has not been refit to this data, but it still did a pretty good job of identifying the bottom if you look at, say, the tolerance band there. This one shows the price of Bitcoin versus time. So this is log. So it helps identify these, longer term price movements and you can see 2023 just staying in this band is going to get us to around $30,000 or so. So hopefully we can just maintain the integrity of this band. This was one of the first charts I made on Bitcoin that showed the logarithmic regression of Bitcoin prices. And again, we talked about, okay, the yellow line was our support in the first cycle. The orange one was the second cycle support. Maybe we'll come down and touch the blue line for our third cycle. And actually, we did come, basically, we came down to it. I mean, I'm missing if you look at it, so this is 1,002.3. So 3. So we did actually come down to it. It doesn't show it on here because this is daily data. But if you were to account the wick that happened to 3,800, it would have touched that line. So it is pretty interesting, I think, that we're coming down one log band each market cycle, but we're dropping 2.5 log bands from each peak to peak. And if we drop another 2.5 log bands, so we go from the red line down to between the purple and green by 2023, it's going to put us just over 100K Bitcoin. This shows the ROI of Bitcoin versus the days since the halving. So you can see the little light blue line is what's been going on so far for the third halving. But you can see the time it took to get to our previous peak, which is this dashed line, is getting longer. So I anticipate for Bitcoin to get to a sustained $20,000, it's going to take another 18 months. It's probably going to be somewhere out over here where it gets to a sustained $20,000 Bitcoin and then goes on a nice run. And then finally, we have the total cryptocurrency market cap fair valuation line. That's our red line. And then our undervaluation green and our overvaluation green. So this helps identify speculative bubbles. And this helps identify the bottoms of the bear markets and, or just not even necessarily the bottoms, but just our general support line if we get down to it. This price was lower than this price, but remember this increases monotonically with time. So this came actually closer to the bottom of the band. So I would anticipate us spending a lot of time below our fair valuation time during this market cycle. We could always pop above it in the short term, just like we did in 2019. But I do anticipate us spending, another year or two below our fair valuation line. So that basically sums it up for a lot of the different types of analysis we do on the video. I know this is quite long, a lot longer than most videos, but it's the 1 year anniversary of the channel, so I really wanted to do the channel a favor, just kind of compile everything into one video, or at least say like 30% of the charts I make into one video, so that you guys can appreciate the types of analysis that we do on the channel. So please subscribe. I would love to have you subscribe. It's kind of baffling when you look back on the last year to look at what all we covered. I mean, we covered so much stuff in the last year. What are we going to cover in the next year? So we're going to look at analyzing different sectors of cryptocurrency, including, say, like decentralized finance, looking at a lot of the peer-to-peer currencies, looking at, say, store of value currencies. We're going to be looking at a lot of different sectors and analyzing those quantitatively, looking at how you can weight your portfolio. A lot of people will just say, okay, this is my portfolio. I'm just going to put it out there and see what people think. No, we're going to dive in further. We're going to look quantitatively what would be, various ways you could weight your portfolio so that you get exposure to the market, to say the majority of the crypto market. And you might be hedging your bets based on various cryptocurrency sectors. So that's going to be taking place over the next year. We're probably going to look at a few more coins over the next year. There's definitely some on the list that I do want to talk about. Just off the top of my head, Monero is a coin that I'll probably be covering sometime in the next year. I'm probably going to be covering a lot of decentralized finance applications, like tokens that are built, that are built on these decentralized these dApps. So be on the lookout for that. So definitely subscribe to see how this stuff. We're certainly going to continue following Bitcoin, certainly going to keep following Ethereum, Cardano, Chainlink, and a few of the other coins mentioned. So definitely tune in. It's going to be another great year, I think, in terms of just continuing to research the markets and preparing ourselves for the bull market that we anticipate taking place, at least the speculative bubble part, sometime in the next 3 years. So it's maybe sometime in 2023. So we have time. Let's just take it one day at a time. We'll go through, what I think you guys need to know. will be here every step of the way, and that by me coming to you guys now, when we're doing the accumulation phase, then maybe when I come to you over here, you'll listen and not just say, okay, Bitcoin's going to $1 million, but the crypto market cap's going to 100 trillion. No, we're gonna say, okay, guys, based on these historical patterns, if we get up into this region, you really might want to consider how you want to proceed, because the risk up here is going to be very high. We've also talked about other assets. We've talked about Tesla. We've talked about oil. We've talked about gold. We've talked about the S&P 500. We're going to continue talking about these as well, and we're going to even expand to other assets as well that we haven't covered, like more individual stocks. We're going to cover gold a lot more, maybe even silver. So if you're looking for, say, a channel with a lot of different diversification, not just cryptocurrency, then this is the channel for you, because assuming crypto does peak out here in 2023, you're not going to want to hold during a bear market. And even if you sell, you're probably still going to want your money to continue to make more money. So you need to learn about these other markets. Don't just be naive and ignorant of every other asset class. You need to learn about other markets if you're not familiar with them, and we're going to continue to cover those on the channel. So I hope that video has been informative. Thank you guys. I've really enjoyed the experience the last year. I look forward to the next year. And I would encourage any of you guys, if you really want to start your YouTube channel, the inertia to get going on it is hard, but once you get going, it becomes a lot easier. So please subscribe to the channel. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Check out my website, intothecryptoverse.com, and I'll see you guys next time.